president had some things to say to our team, to Sagar and Jordan, yesterday, including comments about presidential candidate Joe Biden and the woman who has most recently accused him of sexual assault. And an op-ed asks, is Biden electable? Also, a lot going on. The Iranian president is questioning the mental readiness of Trump.
So Team Rising is in the house. Matt Sheffield is writer, TV producer, and web developer. Eddie Scarry is commentary writer for the Washington Examiner. Welcome to you both.
Morning.
So let's begin. We had a pretty crazy interview with the president yesterday where he went after Jean Carroll. He said that she was totally lying. She's accusing him of rape sometime in the mid-1990s in the middle of a crowded department store, saying she was totally lying, and he said she's not my type and that the incident absolutely did not happen. This is a debate, Eddie, we were having since you cover media earlier. Is he just fanning the flames and making sure that this is just going to get covered by every network in the country now?
Trump?
Trump is like by responding and by elevating this.
Well, I'm guessing you asked him, didn't you?
Well, yeah, of course we did. But I'm saying, I'm saying that by taking the because
he didn't have to respond in this way. He could have just said it's not
yesterday
true.
When there were all hosts of issues where he was like, I'm not going to engage on that because that will cause me problems. I'm not going to. But on this one, he was like just guns blazing.
Right. It's kind of strange. I mean, he did the exact same thing with the Fire and Fury book.
Right.
It's release an official White House statement, give a press conference on it. So yes, of course, he helped sell these books. But I do think that what's going on here is basically what we're seeing in the Trump era, which is that you claim victimhood based on your gender, sexuality, or race. It's almost another Jussie Smollett case where someone says, oh, I've been victimized, but been raped and sexually assaulted. Absolutely no real evidence of any of this other than two people who have not even gone on the record to corroborate her story. And then also she's just a little bit strange. I've been watching her interviews. She refuses to call it a rape. She says it was a fight. So it's bizarre, and I think you're right that Trump isn't helping by weighing in so heavily.
Or maybe by getting her to talk more, he is helping. Matt, what do you think?
He certainly didn't need to say she's not my type. Like, that's not the thing you say about a woman.
Right. It's not, I didn't rape her because she's not my type.
Yeah.
I didn't rape her because rape is evil, wrong, and I would never do that.
She wasn't hot enough for me. Come on, let's get, that's basically what he's saying. Like, it's an awful thing to say.
Right. And I mean, Eddie, just look, none of us were there. None of us know what happened. Jussie Smollett is very different because evidence directly contradicting what he said has come out. So I would put this in a very different category.
Well, not the validity of whether
However,
they're true. I'm just saying the tendency to, I mean, it is indisputable that she is promoting a book right now, and the way you promote a book is you take the most newsworthy part and you put it in a news outlet.
It's also indisputable that 15 women, I think, have accused the president of very similar behavior to which he admitted in that Access Hollywood tape.
Oh, that is such a lie. He never admitted to sexually assaulting anybody in the Hollywood tape.
Well, it certainly sounded like something that he was engaged in based on his comments there. But, I mean, women do not, there's a reason why she did not come forward for so many years and why so many of these women were reluctant to come forward, and that's because it is not fun to make these kinds of allegations. She is getting death threats right now. Like, her personal safety is in danger. So the idea that this is something that women do lightly is just something that I completely reject.
Okay, and this is another thing that's a mark of the Trump era. Anyone who is worth their salt and has the slightest public profile is going to get death threats. I've had death threats. I'm sure you've had them. Everyone gets them, and it's a sad fact of life. That doesn't make any of them okay, but I don't want to have this thing where we feel sympathy for her when she's going on CNN, she's going on MSNBC, she's posing for these glamour shots in New York Magazine.
For her or not.
Also that she can promote a book based on the fact that she says she was assaulted by the president and she's trying to sell a book.
Okay, but just going back to what you were saying, the 15 women who have accused her. So, like, there's so much about the Trump era that's so chaotic, that there's so much craziness, strange things going on all the time, and we always forget we always forget about the stuff that happens. So, like, we have to pretend that John Bolton is normal. We have to pretend that these women didn't say that about Donald Trump, or we just forget it because so much other crazy stuff is happening all the time.
Right.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned John Bolton.
And this put it back on the radar.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned John Bolton because we also talked about Iran with the president. Well, we said the president told us he doesn't think that he needs congressional approval. And that basically that means that he thinks he has the authority under the AUMF to strike Iran. that's, stands in stark contrast to what he said in the past. He said, the President Obama is going to start a war with Iran. And just, Eddie, I think it's interesting looking at how he viewed war during the campaign versus how he views it now. Why do you think he keeps people like Pompeo and Bolton in his cabinet when he so obviously disagrees with them?
Right. I mean, I don't know who's giving him the advice about who he should be hiring. Obviously, John Bolton is one of those people who his liquid dream is to go to war with Iran. But I think that I'm not going to advise him on war strategy, but you look at the very recent history, and it is that you don't tinker around in these countries. If you're going to do anything, you better be committed, and you basically would have to devastate the country in order to come out with any kind of win. Otherwise, we're just going to get bogged down in another Afghanistan, another Iraq.
The idea of a limited military strike in Iran is preposterous. There is no such.
Right.
Like, if you are going to have any kind of military strike, you had better be prepared for potential escalation.
Trump seems to know that. They kind of did come across in the interview, didn't it, Matt?
I think it did to some degree, but I mean, it's really hard to tell what ultimately he's going for, other than, with his foreign policy in that area, which is basically seems to boil down to give the Saudi royal family and Netanyahu whatever they want. Like, that's basically his foreign policy with regard to the Middle East.
Well,
let's take a listen to a little bit of what he did have to say about Iran.
Well, I think we might need military action. We'll see what happens. Today we did very heavy sanctions. Iran is not doing well. When I was first elected, we came into office, Iran was a terror. They were all over. We had anywhere from 14 to 18 points of confliction. They were behind every single one of them. And all of a sudden it works out that now it's a little bit different.
By the way, Matt, for what it's worth, we have a response this morning from Iranian President Hassan Rouhani, who knocked the Trump White House as, quote, afflicted by mental retardation.
It's like the North Korea script, exactly the same.
Well, I mean, one thing that they said, though, did make sense, which is basically like, you can't keep levying sanctions and think we're just going to back down. Like, they have to provide the Iranians some sort of face-saving way to come to the table that does not look like total capitulation.
Well, but see, that's the thing about this whole Iran situation, is that they actually are being very Trumpy in their behavior. So, like with Trump and the North Koreans, so Trump has ideas in terms of wanting to help Saudi Arabia. But he also wants a win, and because he hasn't had a lot of legislation passed. But so if he can get some sort of thing he can call a treaty and say it was a victory, then this is something that he can point to, and that's why like when you look at what he did with North Korea, like he didn't really get anything, but he was so desirous to have a win. To put forward, and I think that's what Iran is doing here. So they've taken some steps with regard to shooting drone down, and some other things to demonstrate that yes, we have power, we will not be bullied. But in fact, they probably are going to come over to the negotiating table pretty soon. Because I mean, look at Yemen. I mean, the situation in Yemen, like. The Trump administration is always saying, "Oh, Iran's doing this and that things in Yemen," and for all we know, they probably are. But the Saudis are doing exactly the same things, and we never say anything about them. So what we need is that is the root, ultimately, I think, of the conflict with Iran is Yemen, and how each of the Saudis and the Iranians are going to deal with it.
Interesting. Sagar also got the president to weigh in on one of his favorite topics, Joe Biden. Let's take a listen.
I think he can only go down. I don't think he's going up. He doesn't have. Look, there's something different. He's a different person than he was 4 or 5 years ago, and he wasn't so hot 4 or 5 years ago.
So very much like the Hillary Clinton playbook, questioning mental fitness in this "there's something going on" kind of a way. However, I will say he's not the only one. He's actually not the only one raising these concerns. You have a New York Times op-ed from Michelle Goldberg. We had a piece from Cenk Uygur in The Hill, and Michelle Goldberg says Joe Biden doesn't look so electable in person. She kind of pulls out some quotes where he doesn't sound totally articulate or with it. So whether this has merit or not, Eddie, it seems to me like a critique that may have some power, both in the Democratic primary, but also in a general.
Yeah, and it seems to me, even in his answer there, and I think he's kind of been saying similar things over the last few weeks, is he's not the same. There's something quite not, the same Joe Biden. I think to some degree he's actually feeling out still where exactly he needs to strike at part of it. But at the same time, he is right. The quote that we had from Biden last week about the segregationist senator didn't call me boy, and I still believe that he has not really clarified what any of that meant.
Well,
even his speech where he was calling Trump an existential threat, it was just a low energy.
It was very low energy.
There's no other way to describe it. It was muted. It was tepid. It was not like the fighting spirit that really emboldens a lot of the Democratic Party right now.
And Eddie, one of his aides, I don't know if you saw it. I think it was to the Washington Post, said that he just messed up the story. That he meant to say he never called me senator, he always called me son. Okay. That's the story, which then makes a little more
it makes it look worse.
But then it looks bad because he's getting his own story wrong, Matt.
Well, and I mean, Trump doesn't care about policy very much, but I think he has a really good knack for understanding campaign dynamics. So like, like when he declared for president in 2015, a lot of people in, professional political observers were like, oh, this guy has no chance. And I wrote something in November of 2015 saying Trump was going to win the GOP nomination. And a bunch of people were like, you are crazy. You have no idea what you're talking about. I'm like, no, he's going to win it. And in terms of Biden has the problem that like a lot of the base Democratic voters like him because they know him, but the Democratic Party activists and leaders don't like him because they're afraid he's too old, that he has all these old positions
and that's where
that are going to cause him problems.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, but at the same time, with the Republican activists and the Republican punditry corps, they hated Donald Trump when he ran, and he still won. So that may not be able to stop Joe Biden. But when you're in the front, all you can do is go down.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us, gents.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thanks,
it.
guys. Great to have your insights.
Thanks.
Coming up, the dispute between the U.S. and China over Huawei is causing some headaches for FedEx. We'll explain.
Scamp the Tramp is world's ugliest dog champ. Will show his endearing face when Rising returns.